Good morning, everyone. I am Akshita Bakshi, currently pursuing PhD from Galgotias University. The topic of my research is Shall I Stay and Try Harder or Leave? A phenomenological study to understand the experience of perceived fading of affection in dating relationships. We at we all at one point in our life must have heard or seen somewhere that as a relationship being described as it is not like before or that we have lost the spark. This very feeling becomes the catalyst for a stronger or a weaker bond. It also speaks a lot about the foundation of the relationship and the way relationship was maintained. Therefore, I decided to study this very phenomena of perceived fading of affection over the course of the relationship by incorporating the focus on relationship dynamics such as initial alignment, the roles, the patterns, the themes, individual characteristics, and adapted coping mechanism which are used to revive the love that people once used to have. The problem statement. It is important to note that historically relationships were not looked at the way it is looked at in the modern society, and India is no exception to it. The relationship is talked about and looked upon differently than before, which has unfortunately brought the significant shift in today's relationship as to how broken and dependent people are becoming over suffering of connection and self. Many therapists has also highlighted that the lack of loving feeling, minimizing the detachment single-handedly through certain strategies, uh, are the major reasons that couples come in for counseling sessions or individuals come in for therapy. One of the studies also highlighted that 70% of people out of 6,700 samples believe that they are not good enough for anybody to be loved. Out of which 42% of people also had an intense desire to be liked by someone, etc. Therefore, the statement of the problem was dating processes has become more emotionally daunting and complex over time with prolonged suffering, loneliness, and emotional despair. Forming connections are becoming complicated. It is important to observe the shift in today's relationship, how broken and dependent people become after suffering the loss of self and connection. Trauma bonding is being confused with love. Self abandonment is considered as a token of affection. Self awareness is ignored, and gradually, ingratitude is becoming the foundation of relationships. Even though relationship researchers have focused upon individual components, we focus on interplay of these components in relationship dynamics and go beyond the what of the relationship problems. Moreover, we try to capture the participants' perceptions and experience of this phenomena as it has been understudied in empirical literature. The aims and objectives of this study was to understand how people experience the fading of affection over a period of time and simultaneously cope with the same, to understand the reasons, reactions, and consequences of the studied experience, to find out the phenomena of going beyond the end of honeymoon phase, to understand the patterns leading towards healthy and unhealthy relationship, to focus on the evolution of feelings, behavior, and thoughts over the period of time, to understand the pathway that sets the foundation and the structure of the relationship as a whole. This section of my presentation is based on methodology. I use phenomenological research as my as my approach. I adopted phenomenological research for my study as I wanted to explore the stories of people containing emotional and behavioral aspects. Phenomenology is also used to examine the lived experiences of the subjects to find the common meaning within the phenomena. Hence, it was best suited for my research. The systematic literature review was conducted to have an existing knowledge base to understand the current patterns, themes, and theories based on affection, love, and modern relationship patterns. Then a purposive snowball technique, snowball sampling was done by targeting the group of people who have experienced fading affection. Then interviews were conducted, semi-structured interviews were conducted for 1.5 hours each. Informant feedback was conducted throughout the interview process to have a validation on the information that I was analyzing. It was done by paraphrasing the essence of what participants shared to validate the information and helped in judging the accuracy of it. It was also made sure that the participant I were on the same page with the conclusions being drawn from the information they were sharing through member checks, that is informant feedbacks. The data analysis using content analysis, I used a four-step process: decontextualization, recontextualization, categorization, and compilation. After the interviews were conducted, the recordings were transcribed for each individual. From the transcribed data, I sieved through the um, most important part of the responses, after which the aim was to categorize the responses as feelings, behaviors, and thoughts, as we were focusing on all three in our study, like over the course of the relationship. To analyze the responses, I tried to find out which response fit the best under which category of feelings and behaviors. Thoughts were separately noted down for each individual, as I decided to do binary coding and plotting for specifically two aspects: feelings and behavior. We wanted to see how the responses under feelings and behavior evolve and are correlated over the period of time. The next uh, the next section of my research is results and discussion. Obtain data categorization. The total participants I had were 15, out of which unhealthy relationships were 11, and 4 participants were from healthy relationships. The factors of interpretations were dynamics, evolution of feelings and behavior over the course of the relationship, and displayed coping mechanism. The ideal affection standards. The first question of the research was direct, which was what are the ideal affection standards ideal standards of affection that people hold, for which I got 15 common responses, under which there were many similar responses. So these are the umbrella terms for many other responses which fits under the category. For example, consistency. There were 15 of the total ideal affection that were consistency, shared interest, emotional availability, support, feeling wanted, touch, spontaneity, active listening, presence, attentiveness, thoughtful gestures, vulnerability, trust and commitment, acknowledgement, power, influence, and communication. So, the expected affection discrepancy. When it was asked for them to rate how important it is for them, for their partners to show affection towards them, there were most of the participants rated 2, 3, or 4, which belongs to low to high importance. The participants' justification of the scores were that high standards are futile, it reinforces possessiveness, it is bound to bring disappointment, it is too cliche, clingy, and needy to have expectations, and can adjust to the just enough affection. The factors that were responsible were fear-based love and narratives. Like, for example, choosing fear, false self over the real self due to past relationships and childhood attachment wounds. Narratives such as I am not good enough or I need to earn my love, etc. The intense need of feeling wanted was more important than the feeling of unwantedness. Convincing partner to choose them via pretense, that is, believing that they need to be somebody in order to be liked and deserving of love, which also encouraged them to hold back their real self. Then lack of self-awareness and self-worth. There were few participants who did rated high importance. Most of them belong to the healthy relationship group, but there were some who also belong to which were very few, which also belong to the unhealthy relationship group. People who belong to the unhealthy relationship group did contradicted their own standards of affection over the period of time, which means that every participant, irrespective of the type of relationship, was aware what is right for them and what they really deserve, but worthiness attachment wounds kept them stuck in the cycle of less than. People who justified their rating as 5, they justified it with the reasons as important to generate safety within relationship, increases alignment, sets the tone of the relationship, it enables healthy give and take and motivation to invest. The factors responsible were for healthy group majorly self-awareness, context of the words needy and validation, vulnerability, healthy communication, reality was greater than potential, love as growth, and co-creating safety. Discussing further results for specifically unhealthy relationships. evolution of feeling over the period of time. It is divided into initial phase, intermediate phase, and middle phase. This slide reflects the feelings over the course of the relationship. Each feeling mentioned here is an umbrella feeling under which several common responses by the participants were placed. Even though the responses were different, based on the experiences of several events, it all led to the common meaning with the same underlying feeling. Some feelings were defined across the spectrum, such as comfort, which you can see in the initial phase. Comfort, by analyzing that response, it led us to 5 different ways of expressing the feeling of comfort and the meaning of it. The expression of the feeling was in the form of a state of contentment, similar ideologies, easy to be with, humor, and a sigh of relief. All the positive feelings in the initial phase were positive and the perfect idealized version of what the participants wanted, which quickly turned into, within the gap of 6 to 8 months of the relationship, into the hardest of emotions they ever imagined. By the end phase, all the participants in the unhealthy relationship went out of love, were disillusioned, and had an out of love experience, like a quick deterioration. It was interesting to see how, for people in unhealthy relationship, the disillusionment process were much delayed. It was like after a year or plus, and for healthy relationship, it happened within 6 months, which we will cover in the later slides. This is an illustration of how people experience these feelings over the course of time. Initial positive feelings. This graph is based on initial positive feelings. As it can be seen, every positive feeling were at its peak, following with a sudden extreme drops by the middle phase, that is T2. The feeling of positivity by the end phase started to went up the graph a little because of detachment, a shift in focus towards self-care, and shattered fantasies, which leads to detachment and deterioration. And the acceptance that this relationship is not turning into forever. Hence, shattering the illusions and fantasies. Similarly, this graph reflects the negative feeling over the course of the relationship. It was observed that during the initial phase, there were existing feelings of worthiness, fear of vulnerability, or um, fear of abandonment and imbalance. But they were suppressed due to the ecstatic feeling of being in love and turning a blind eye towards any negative thought towards a relationship. Everything was denied until these suppressed feelings came on the surface, when the affection was withdrawn from them and they perceived change as a threat. This led to even harder emotions such as emotional exhaustion, emotional deprivation, loss of sense of self, etc. Evolution of behavior over the course of relationship. These are the partners behavior. The initial and intermediate are the partners behavior on which the feelings of the participants were heavily dependent. The initial phase had every possible affectionate communication through actions that the participants dreamed of. As many participants called it a dream come true, they never knew they could be loved just as their partners were loving them, or that they could be seen for who they are. Once the commitment was secured and participants were all in, that is, they were over functioning, over gaming, and over committed, that kept their partners on pedestals, things started taking a change, which are listed in the intermediate phase. The end phase in this covers basically the coping mechanism, which were also the participants' behavior throughout the phases of the relationship. Um, the next slide focuses on the positive behavior over the period of time. It can be seen that the positive actions were at a satisfactory or a just good enough level based on participants' responses towards the partner's actions. Like how much effort they need to make was dependent on participants' responses. Every positive feeling shifted to the base of the graph due to the change in their behavior. As I mentioned before, the positive behavior from the initial phase, because they realize the pursuit is not being done anymore, the graph shows how the behavior started to pick up the numbers by the end phase. This is the intermediate phase. Basically, the intermediate phase, the major responses were covered under these four main behaviors. even though these actions, as you can see, were observed by the participants in the middle phase, they did existed before, to which the feelings of love and joy became the reason to avoid and deny. Some justified saying that maybe I'm overthinking it, or it's just their way of showing love. Their controlling efforts were seen as caring gestures, and so on. The coping strategies. Emotional drama. The participants used these three coping strategies. Emotional drama included protesting behavior, testing behavior, passive aggression. Second, persistent self-betrayal, which was sacrificing needs, wants, or interests, downplaying hurtful actions, absence of self-care, rejecting vulnerability, holding on to despite mistreatment, confusion, fear of losing attachment, accepting to settle for bare minimum, and fantasy bubble burst. This is a illustration of the coping mechanism. These unhealthy coping mechanisms did existed in the beginning, which reflects participant was built on fear, authenticity, and intention of getting their needs met, of feeling loved, safe, seen, heard, or validated. As most of the individuals' responses did reflected that they loved themselves as much as their partner made them feel loved, and nothing more than that. Changes in perception throughout the relationship phases due to the receiving affection and secured shift in perception towards their worthiness, moments of connection, moments of disconnection. It all shifted from I am good enough to I'm not good enough. I am important to I'm unimportant. I want to grow as an individual. I don't deserve growth. Similar for partner. My partner listens to me, my partner empathizes with me, expresses love, which shifted to disillusionment. They are not who we thought they are capable of, or the person we initially loved. In relationship, this relationship is permanent, led to this relationship. Intermediate phase of the relationship is more of denying the reality. That is why the statements like, I want to cling on to this relationship as it has a future, which led to the end phase. I can't give this relationship any more chances. The salient findings. Even though there were no specific stages or process mentioned by the participants in the experiencing of fading affection through their partner, the essence from the participants' responses indicates few consistent patterns that were common in developing a pathway. Patterns among participants were intense attachment, focus on fulfillment of the needs, total mental capture, that is crystallization, where you where you avoid rejection at all costs, deterioration, and which led to limerence love. This is a pattern of limerence love. Then a pattern among participants' partner was that of trauma bond based on participants' responses, excessive showering of love, gaining of trust, increased criticism, gaslighting. Cycle of limerence love showered on a toxic partner. This was one of the this was one of the most important finding, as it reflects the whole cycle of limerence love and toxic partner and how they're stuck in that cycle. People attachment wounds are basically the people carrying the memories of childhood, emotional neglect, and weight of those ego stories into adult relationship, which suffer the constant fear of being neglected or abandoned when it comes to perceived insecurity in relationships. So as you can see, attachment wounds lead to meet a partner who is emotionally abusive, intense euphoria, love bombing, trust and dependence are built, crystallization, partner shuts down, needs, wants, criticism, gaslighting was the way through which they shut down their their partner's needs and wants. Self-blame, attempts to be good enough, alternative kind acts and act of rejection, which are consistent throughout, cognitive dissonance and excuses, hyper-vigilant searching for clues, finding hidden meaning to feel worthy, lack of consistency and emotional safety, resigned to control and lost sense of self, disillusionment, deterioration, mutual emotional detachment and withdrawal, and waiting for the partner to break off the relationship. It was interesting to note how participants could not get out of the relationship, let go of it, or break up, but they waited for their partners to do that. This was another very interesting finding, which was pathway of experiencing partners fading of affection. This dimension contains the factors pertaining to participants that might have contributed to the intense experience of fading affection. What participants brought to the relationship: minimizing, denying early relationship problems, low affection, higher commitment, which means as the affection decreased from partner, the participants' commitment increased. enduring the betrayal of trust, efforts to fix partner relationship, resigning to control, loss of sense of self, shattering of illusion and fantasies, last-ditch efforts to seek affection, lost passion out of love, holding on to elusive hope and self-care. This was a pattern and the stages in which the participants contributed towards a relationship dynamic. Then comes emotional struggle, cognitive dissonance, incompatible coexisting emotions, love, hate, fear, success, loved, unloved, which kept them very disoriented and confused. Lost individuality, loneliness, isolation, hard emotions such as frustration, anger, resentment, contempt. Pathway towards building weak relationship foundation, other relationship dynamics. These are the themes that were found, which also shows the foundation of the dysfunctional relationship. That is, tolerating the unhealthy behavioral actions, the desire to be chosen, realizations and wishful thinking, fear of not being good enough, acceptance and decision after disillusionment, falling out of love with the version or idea of my partner, coping and consequences, reconnecting with self and expression of emotion. These further slides focus on the comparisons with healthy relationships. As you can see, primary feelings and behavior were that of co-creating safety, vulnerability, stability and balance, emotional validation, mutual presence and work, which were not present in unhealthy dynamics. Participants' feelings and partners' behavior over the period of time. Patterns among participants and partners. It was important to note that among healthy relationships, the patterns are very much similar between uh, both of the couple members. That is, intense love and getting serious, disillusionment, personal insecurities, conflict management as team, deepening bonding, and enduring love. The fading affection and coping. Disillusionment did happen in healthy relationships as well, where they felt the relationship isn't like before, my partner is changing. The difference in dealing lied in its coping. The unhealthy relationship relied on vulnerable space, creating emotional drama, self-betrayal, holding on to despite mistreatment, whereas among healthy group, they relied more on having difficult conversations, having a healthy communication and personal growth, as well as honoring the other person's needs. These are the changes that you can see. For example, sudden change once committed was secured in unhealthy, unfolding the management in unhealthy relationships. In this gradual change due to disillusionment, which was a part of healthy relationship. Expressing relationship challenges were met with disregard and manipulation. Expressing relationship challenges were met with mutual emotional expression, listening, accountability, and change. In this, we can see that the participants' feelings and partners' behavior. For example, in the first graph, you can see that the unhealthy conflicts were not present, then they became present in the middle phase, and then they became not present. Lack of efforts. Even though there was a lack of efforts, shows the increase in number in the graph. It doesn't. It was not. There was not a negative connotation towards it from the participants. They took it as something that we both understand each other now, that the context has change of efforts for them and they are ready to move on along with the changes. Similarly, in this, it can be seen that vulnerability did started to take an unhealthy turn by the middle phase due to factors such as mistakes, conflicts, insecurities, not able to find middle ground, blaming, etc. But due to teamwork and building trust, the ways of being with them, time, there was emotional validation, reassurances, etc., which showed that there was ownership, honor, and autonomy. It was believed that by gaining a better understanding of the roles, dynamics, and components that are prevalent in trauma bonds, it would be possible to expand the research knowledge uh, that would benefit the individual, society, and relationship as a whole. Hence, this slide is dedicated to interventions for individuals entering relationship. Work towards being happy, whole individual, building a healthy guide to relationship. A plan to fix your mate or believing things will get better should never be assumed. Focus on growth and change as relationship and people evolve, combining logic with emotion, listening to intuition, being real with self, paying attention. Know the difference between bending and breaking. For professionals, to implement education for young adults regarding healthy romantic relationships and elements important for enduring and satisfying long term relationships. For mental health workers, know your client, encourage individual couple therapy, focus on additional emotional concerns along with main issue. Discuss and assess the client's past and how it can affect their mate selection choices. If there are concerns of insecure attachment, work on reducing negative reactions which are detrimental to the fulfilling relationships. Dialectal behavior therapy can be used, or ensuring positive self-repair skills. Skill building, including behavior modification and communication skills, are highly recommended to put a barrier between love turning into toxic relationships. This brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you for providing me this opportunity to present my work. Thank you, everyone.